Howdy, folks. Your host, Double J, back here, coming at you live from my studio slash RV dining room in my living in a van down by the river, directly from Appalachia. I will be your pilot and navigator for this shenanigan infused journey into the mind of this particular garbage can dude. And got a real fantastic show on this evening. Joining me here, of course, is my co-host Andine, and we got Brennan, molder of young minds and aficionado of all things Disney, joining us here for this discussion of what I like to call death to Disney, both figuratively and possibly literally, because they got a big time hurricane coming, with a bullseye directly on Disney World down there in Florida right now. That I'd say it's just about time for that mouse to either evacuate or start learning how to swim, because it's not looking good. But Dan, Brennan, welcome to the show. I appreciate y'all joining me here this evening.
I think mice can swim. I think
there's
a plethora of ducks down there. I don't know. Maybe the goddamn Springfield Haitians should head down there.
That's a fantastic plan.
Get something to eat. I don't know.
Dan's in Springfield here, Brennan. We're of course the hotbed of psychological operations regarding Haitians eating pets have been popping off here recently. Not familiar with that one, huh?
Yeah, you don't know.
I guess I hear things about that, but it just always seems like such a strange thing. I don't know what to think of it.
Oh yeah, we're eating pets over here. I'll shoot you a good recipe for labradoodle after the podcast.
I love the level of memery that's popped off around it, because I've seen videos of folks going into pet stores in Springfield and dog grooming facility operations, asking them like, hey, how much for a dog, how much for a cat. So it's definitely gotten out of control, which I like.
I love the memes. I love the memes for sure.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect for the current year we're in, as far as what I like call meme world. Things that used to be fiction or meme is now reality. Actually, we're going to talk about some of that tonight relative to Disney, because I think movies like Beverly Hills Cop 3 perfectly captured the sort of the atmosphere and environment of what I view as behind the scenes at Disney, which was the villains in that film were operating out of a basically bootleg Disney, out of Disneyland, out of Southern California, running all sorts of criminal operations. And that's kind of how I view Disney, generally speaking. I mean, for good reasons that we'll obviously go over. But Brandon, you got a lot of interest in Disney as well, right? I know that's something we've in great details in the past.
Yeah, I've been it's funny, like say that Beverly Hills thing again. That was pretty interesting. What was that? This is Beverly Hills 3. I hadn't seen this before. What was the plot? That's
I got the trailer. I got the trailer already queued up for us. So give me one moment, please.
Hell yeah!
I would love to watch this. I would love to watch
it. I love that. The Beverly Hills Cop series altogether is pretty good. But this one, Eddie Murphy did some good parody there in the 90s. I don't think he gets a lot of credit for. I think this is one of them.
So good.
I'm obviously a big fan of parody. All things Operation GCD here seems pretty obvious. I hope to folks that I am that much into parody. But Eddie Murphy did a film called The Distinguished Gentleman, and
fantastic.
It's one of the best films of the 90s in my opinion.
Love that movie.
Completely ignored. Brandon, are you hip to this one? A little bit before your time, so
I'm not, but I'm interested.
Yeah, so this is what I mean. It's really ignored because obviously it's a little bit for your generation there, as far as the peak Eddie Murphy of the late 80s and early 90s. He did a film seemingly off character, kind of off color from what he was normally doing at the time. Even from his dramatic stuff, is a little bit still, a little bit odd, because this version of a comedy was not his normal Axel Foley version of a comedy, which, he kills it as Axel Foley. He actually plays Axel Foley in another movie called The Golden Child.
Fucking fantastic. God damn, that's a great movie.
Brandon,
I want the knife.
Exactly. He plays Axel Foley, but he's really Eddie Murphy's a private detective who searches for missing children in Los Angeles, and he basically gets wrapped up in this worldwide satanic. Literally, he's battling Satan, not just the satanic cults that he's initially battling in the child trafficking operations. He then goes and battles Satan in, I believe, Tibet, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Wow, what a plot. What a plot.
That's
But
completely different from the Distinguished Gentleman plot where he
completely
runs
different.
through.
But yeah. So that's I'm used to that kind of level of comedy out of the guy. But he went and made in around 92, circa 92, made The Distinguished Gentleman, and he it's the best. It's to my opinion, after working in DC for 6 years at Air Force headquarters, it's in my opinion the best kind of picture of capturing the most accurate. Thank you, Dan. The most accurate representation of DC politics. I mean, first of all, his character runs to be and wins the U.S. congressional election based on having the same name as the guy that just died. It was in that same seat, so he's already making it with no skills and anything else. He's basically making it because people are going to vote for someone's name. But then he then goes on to expose all of Washington D.C. in his kind of first term in a very flamboyant and comedic fashion, only that Eddie Murphy can accomplish. And I don't know, I just think it's great parody. And then of course, what I think he captured here with the Beverly Hills Cop 3 is how I picture Disney operates.
I see. Well, it sounds like a character that like Eddie Murphy's always a performer that I've looked up to. So I'll have to watch this.
Oh, highly recommend. Golden Child, highly recommend that. And definitely Distinguished Gentleman. And then
Harlem Nights is another.
Hello, welcome to the Beverly Hills Police Department. To continue this message in English, press £1. If you have homeless people on your lawn, press 2*.
Which that's pretty accurate to 2024, right? Homeless folks on the lawns of Beverly Hills.
Vacation? I'm looking for a killer. One, please. We got some evidence that points to Wonder World.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean,
Wonder World.
You got yourself in the middle of a federal investigation. That guy killed a police officer. He killed a friend of mine.
You just keep him out of my face and out of my park.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a tremendous surprise for Mr. Duvall to have me standing right next to him right now.
So that guy's like the chief of security for Disney, like Disney.
Hold right on the spider.
Hold on tight. Axel.
Hey. Officers, I want this man arrested.
I'm sure you can explain everything, or maybe you can't explain anything.
You're going back to Detroit.
That guy's like a bad Secret Service agent. One of the crimes they're doing is counterfeit funds.
Go!
Oh, Balky.
Oh man, he was great in this Beverly Hills Cops as the
Bronson Pinchot.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, strange.
So they have they're running trafficking operations out of there, right? They got some counterfeit money operations going on. I mean, it really alludes to Disney being in Southern California. They have the alliteration of their own mascot, like Mickey Mouse, right? That same alliteration. So that's kind of how I view Disney, just to give you a side picture, Brennan, of where I'm coming from on the topic of Disney.
No, I get that. I mean, I kind of have I certainly have a complicated relationship to it. I mean, I think it's really hilarious to me that the hurricane of all things is named Milton, right? You've got the guy who wrote Paradise Lost. You got Satan fallen
John
to
Milton,
earth,
right?
Nephilim and everything. It's pretty strange, pretty strange. I guess the mythological connections to all that. But I guess I do want to introduce something that.
May I interrupt you real quick there, Brian? May I interject there?
Sure.
What was Mickey Mouse's first? Was Mickey Mouse's first name? What was it? What was his character's name before?
We're thinking of Mortimer Mouse.
Okay, I was gonna say what Milton was it? Yeah, Mortimer Mouse. There we go. Thank you, Dan.
I thought it was there was also the Oswald character too. I think
Oswald the Rabbit.
Oswald the Rabbit. Okay, yeah. I knew there was another alliteration name before Mickey Mouse. He was known as something else, as Mortimer.
Yeah, I think it was a different character there.
Oh, it was okay. So that'd be cool.
Just
it was like Hurricane Mortimer. Go ahead.
Oh, interesting.
I'm just saying.
I didn't make that connection. Right? Wow. I remember seeing that Mickey Mouse had that one comic where he was inducted into the Masons. Do you remember that? We saw that comic strip, if I'm remembering correctly.
Can you say that again?
Disney as well. It's pretty strange.
Can you say that again? It cut out for a moment.
Oh yeah. Mickey Mouse was inducted into the Masons, like a comic
Oh,
strip of all things back in the day. You
that's
can look it
right.
up, and Walt Disney was a Mason as well.
He was.
Yeah, he was also a
in LA,
Nazi, and
right?
Donald Duck went to work for the Fuhrer.
He was a Nazi.
Really?
For
I thought
sure.
they made anti-Nazi cartoons.
Yeah,
Interesting.
there are some beliefs on both sides of the fence, I think.
Maybe it was an internal
Interesting.
production. Maybe
I
in
see.
the
Well,
internal
I mean,
productions,
from what I've
they
read in terms of Walt Disney's
reordered for
biography,
Fuhrer.
at least from what I understand, the evidence is pretty low. But maybe if you guys have it, I could see it. But I hadn't seen. Is he supposed to have been? Well, tell me more. Tell me more. What is the stuff about Walt Disney?
The
Listen,
Nazis.
I don't
I didn't
base
know about
anything
this.
I have in my head on fact.
Oh, I see. Got
Pure,
it.
pure
I think
conjecture and speculation.
I think what Dan's
Gotcha.
saying is that Walt Disney's the one who promoted Werner von Braun in the space program in the early 1950s, before it
Oh,
was
gotcha.
NASA.
Yeah.
When at a time the NASA space program, right, was run by Werner von Braun and other Nazis, but it was a purely military operation until like 1957. My
Gotcha,
grandfather
that's
worked
right,
for NASA for many years, so I have a fairly good understanding of their history. But yeah, it was definitely a military. He was part of the military operation too, I believe, before he even transitioned into the civilian side. But yeah, it became a civilian operation, I believe, in 1957.
Gotcha. Well, there's something with Werner von Braun I would love to tell you about that you may not have heard of. He was a part of a study, in the Vatican called the chronovisor. Do you guys know what this is?
Oh, I do
This
not.
was like a Vatican time machine. You can look this up. It's supposed to just be like an urban legend, but like the main exorcist at the Vatican at the time is the guy who was supposed to have created. He gave like full on talks about it. You can look all this up. It was later kind of pointed out as a hoax, but I don't know. I think there's something kind of brilliant about it and how it, because Catholicism, right? It's like a belief system. It's kind of based on faith. You kind of have to like take a leap of faith to a certain extent, right, to believe in these sorts of things. So maybe it was a hoax, right? Maybe the chronovisor, this time machine, that's like a television where you can kind of look at other, I guess
It's like a
moments from the
portal,
past or the future.
like
I
a
guess
portal
you
through
could
like
think
a.
of it that way. It
Yeah,
was
that's
supposed to
wild.
be legitimate television that they built where you could watch images from the past, and supposedly they they took it in a religious direction where it was like they watched Jesus's crucifixion or something, and they had photos of it supposedly, but those turned out to be just, I guess, repeated images from paintings or something like that. But I don't know. It's an interesting urban legend that Werner von Braun was on the team, which I
Are you
find
making Are you making the
Oh, go ahead.
suggestion that the Vatican and the Catholic Church was being less than honest with the public? That doesn't
be.
seem to fit
I mean,
with
They
everything I've
definitely
ever
don't have a
heard
history of that.
about them. They have been nothing but forthwith and honest with the public.
I don't know. I thought
The
it was kind of
pinnacle of
interesting. I
ethics
thought it
and
was kind of
morals.
like I guess that might be true, but I kind of find it to be like a beautiful story in some ways. I don't mean to be cheesy, but this idea that they like built a time machine, it's like it's got a nice metaphor to it, I guess, right? Because like, I mean, what is like even Beverly Hills 3, right? Like when we watch that, is that a time machine? I don't know, kind of,
Well,
I
I
don't know,
mean,
kind of
I
changed
think you bring up
what I
some good
think of,
points.
the way I think of stuff.
Well,
Anyways, that's what I like
well, no,
about that story. But yeah.
I'm going to definitely check more of that out. I'm not familiar with that. I appreciate that tale there, Brennan, because I mean, I think what a lot of folks don't recognize is that the Vatican basically created time and science. I mean, they've literally changed the calendar. I don't know how many times. They've apparently added and subtracted years during these calendar changes in numerous instances because we're counting time differently all of a sudden. For example, I believe after it was maybe 1750 or so, I think the calendar changed here in America. So, for example, like George Washington had two different birth dates, and a lot of those folks of that era, when you look on their gravestones, they'll have two different birth dates listed on their gravestone. I believe he had two different 12th birthdays when he was because due to the calendar
Well, what I
change
can
from
say,
the
I
Brits.
mean, Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good, man. I was just, that with the Vatican inventing time and science, like all everything we know about space and essentially science was started by the Vatican. So I'm just saying, like, I think an idea like having some sort of box of that sounds on its face kind of ridiculous, but I don't really attribute much ridiculousness to what the Nazis were interested in. They were pretty serious about everything they did.
Oh yeah, I've seen the Indiana Jones movies.
Yeah. If I've learned anything from watching Indiana Jones films, they were a serious bunch.
Oh yeah.
That's true. They wanted that Holy Grail pretty damn bad,
Not to mention the
Oh.
Ark of the Covenant.
Absolutely. The Spear of Destiny.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I didn't make the connections with that. That's funny. Well, to go one more thing about that, I guess. I do find Disney and the Catholic Church, I guess I kind of have the same opinion about them in some ways, where it's like,
Okay.
they're institutions made up of human beings, right? Like, in some ways, I'm absolutely horrified by them both. But in some ways, also,
Well,
it's
I agree
made
with you
up
there.
of, it's all made up of people. You know what I mean? It's not, it's just strange how these things can, anything can kind of get out of control. But I guess what I like about the whole fallen angel idea, I kind of have this expression all the time of like, better to be a fallen angel because then the only way is up, right?
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking of with this Milton thing. I've been kind of horrified seeing it. I don't want any. It's horrible. I mean, I can't believe it's happening. I don't like Disney necessarily, but I don't want. I don't want animals to have to die that are innocent. I don't want any of these things. I don't want people to have to. So sucks. But let me tell y'all a little bit. I've been working on this project for about 5 or 6 years. That's a novel. And you were talking about this Beverly Hills Cop thing, and it's just odd. I'm not gonna lie to you.
All right.
There's some weird synchronicities, but
I like it.
That's his favorite type of.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway,
What do you got? What kind of weird sync? What kind of weird syncs we talking about here?
well, I mean, it's odd because it's like all I was doing was trying to write a book, That's
Yep.
why it was also a little weird to me that it was called Milton. I think the major issue that I kind of have with Disney is kind of the issue with copyright. They are so intense about that. That's kind of what got me kind of looking into their stuff, looking into how intense they could get. And it's funny because that was what Milton.
I just want to put a bookmark on that real quick. I just want to put a bookmark on that point. I'm glad you brought that up because I'm going to focus on that later here. The copyright, their insane nature of copyright. So go ahead. I just want to put a bookmark on that for you, Brent. Because speaking of synchronicities, that I highlighted their copyright stuff and something relative to that. But yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, his whole thing was licensing, right? And whenever he wrote, I don't remember what the name was, but it was what he wrote before he had written Paradise Lost. It was basically addressing that. And it's kind of ironic, he worked as a civil servant, I work as a civil servant. I mean, I guess I'm working as a civil servant directly, but I'm a teacher. I'm a servant for public institution or private. I mean, I guess I work for a private school now, but it's still very similar.
Sure.
So it's just very odd. It's like weirdly synchronistically connected. And my book was called, I finished it, and I've kind of been looking for a publisher, but I'm really more trying to just build it into something new. I'll get into the nitty-gritty with it later, but the original title was The Entranceway into the Wonderful Worlds of Gibbsby. So the entranceway.
Because you can't use Disney, right? Like is that the shtick there? Because you can't actually, due to copyright laws and whatnot, you can't use the term Disney. Is that why you came up with the? Yeah. Okay. Tracking.
Yep.
I love explaining.
And a point that I'm kind of making from the very beginning is this idea of I'm not the author of this book. I'm just an author of the book. Which is kind of true, I mean, in writing it, I've, had friends send me things. I don't know, what got in it, what stayed out. When you start to write, you kind of lose track as an artist of what it is that you're writing. And is it you? Is it something else? You don't really know. It's not exactly clear. And I think it's kind of better, take the fallen angel approach. Don't get egotistical about it. You weren't the
Sure.
one who wrote it. And it's fiction anyway, so you really didn't. It's just fiction.
So you're
And,
saying you created a whole new world?
I mean, I don't know about that, but I mean,
What
it was
so what
weird.
goes on in
I don't know.
the Gibney universe versus the Disney
Oh,
universe? Is it
man.
the same universe?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I was living in Austin at the time, and I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of the writer Philip K. Dick. Do you guys like him at all?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Who
I
is it?
love his work. And if you guys haven't, for anybody
Phil
who hasn't
Dick?
heard him, yeah, he's the guy who made the Blade Runner, the original book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? He did A Scanner Darkly,
Yeah.
Man in the High Castle. So all these, like, I think he's pretty much the most adapted science fiction writer in the last, like, I don't
Yeah.
know, 2 decades or whatever. But anyway,
Minority Report was another one. That's a great
Minority
Tom
Report. That's
Cruise
exactly
film.
right. Yeah. He's so great, and I've always
I mean,
his biography is just fascinating. But he had a lot of really weird experiences. I kind of feel like I'm living in a Philip K. Dick novel sometimes, even
okay.
right now in this call a little bit.
Right. So
It's a little odd.
the Gibney universe gets a little Philip K. Dick, does it?
Yes, it does. Yes, it
Nice.
does. As you say, reality and fiction can sometimes blur.
They
And in that
often
way-
do. Yeah, they often do.
And in that way, it's why copyright is a strange thing in some ways, right? Like, if you're not the
Okay.
one, if it's just about clinging to your ego to hold on to something anyway, I don't know. It seems like copyright is a strange thing. I just don't understand it. I'm not saying, I'm not taking any positions. It just doesn't make sense to me necessarily. That's all I'm saying.
You hold a very
But,
Chinese position relative to like patents, right? They don't understand U.S. patents. They're like, what are these patents? We're Chinamen. We'll just make it. They oftentimes knock off U.S. patents.
I don't know. Do you think so? I mean, I don't know. I work with a lot of students from China, so I gotta be careful about that because I care
I've
about
actually
China.
I've actually had patents stolen by Chinese companies, so yeah, I do think so. But
Oh, really? Interesting. That's a
Yeah.
bummer.
things I've
I'm sorry to
patented.
hear that.
So
Well, it all works out in the end. I'd like to steal them from Chinese companies. So,
Is that what I should start doing? Start stealing Chinese
yeah,
patents?
it's 6 of one,
Enforce it
half
here,
a dozen
buddy,
of the
and see
other.
what you got. Maybe those.
I see.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like, is that your kind of your view on copyright? Like, you just like, this is just a word. Like, it's not really a thing. It's kind of how the Chinese view patents, I feel like.
No, I mean, I don't know. I feel conflicted about it. I mean, I feel like it's more of who gets to use it, I think, is what the issue is for me. That's where I have issues. I feel like oftentimes it's mostly used to protect companies like Disney rather than, I guess like the little guy or something like that,
Okay.
So that's why I care about it, or care about, like, I guess, like probing it or poking at it or something. I'll give you an
you
example.
make a solid point, because there was a fellow that they created the cartoon, basically a SpongeBob, before it was stolen from him. It was published in
Well, I
some
think that
newspapers.
this is what the irony is, I guess, is because Disney had his stuff stolen. Like Oswald the Rabbit
Sure.
stolen from Universal. You know what I mean? So I think that's what's like so good to keep in mind, is to kind of try to take a human approach to these things as you can. And that's also true for, like, I guess, like, our nation, other nations, whatever. I don't mean to be cheesy or something, but I don't know. I'm in the healing business. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's what I try
So-
to do as best I can. Synthesis
You'd
as
mentioned,
much as I
Walt
obviously
Disney
without-
was a Freemason, right? We saw that display at
Sure.
the George Washington Masonic Temple there in
That was
Alexandria,
true.
right?
I found that so odd.
Yeah, so he was D Malay, which was like their Boy Scouts for the, at minimum, that seems to be what they had on record there at the museum, at least. So what do you think? And he later had these Nazi affiliations with Werner von Braun and whatnot, and selling space to the
Well, I
American
don't know.
public.
I would say that in my personal opinion, I think that kind of stuff is a stretch. I mean, I'll give you an example. I mean, this could just be biographical BS, right? I don't know that for a
Right.
fact, but supposedly, like, whenever he saw, like, To Kill a Mockingbird, he cried or whatever, right? But it's not like he doesn't have, like, that Song of the South film. So I think it's like, like, Walt Disney was an American, like, he completely contradicted himself, and
He's a complex man, is what you're saying.
complicated that.
Complex
huh?
fella. He was a complex
He
man.
was a complex fella, but I think, that's why I'll still advocate for him. And like I remember him saying, as long as imagination exists, Disney will never die, and I like that idea. Even if I don't
Sure.
necessarily like Disney.
So-
It's interesting. It's even if it's just my book isn't published, I don't even know if I want to. Honestly, half the time, uh, I don't know if like maybe Disney wants that. I don't know. Who knows? I'm joking, but it is very odd. I mean, there's like I guess the thing that weirded me out the most. I'm not saying anything's happened. I'm not saying I'm responsible for anything. Absolutely not. All I did was
Okay.
write a book. But I wake up and I see this news. And there are floods in my book at various parts. There's various things references to that. And I mean, it can be a little apocalyptic. It's a dystopian novel. I have a lot, I'm very interested in mystical religions. So it's like, a very common image in a lot of these things. But, the title of the entranceway itself, an entranceway is an archway, right?
Yeah.
Is an archway, So I thought that was kind of odd to think about. And
Sure. Did these floods
very
destroy the Gibney Corporation in your novel?
No. Where the most intense flood occurs is there's this character named Glyph Marrow, and he's kind of a private detective, but he's kind of in a I guess this sort of haunted ride, I suppose. And he has this
Like the haunted
odd
mansion at Disneyland?
It's not exactly. It's supposed to be. It's called the even more substantial, even more substantially sizable Thunder Monument Railroad Ride, is what it's called. So it's
That
it's
is
a play
very
on
Philip
Big
K. Dick
Thunder.
kind
That's
of
a catchy name.
too.
That's a
Yeah.
catchy name.
I'm surprised I was able to remember that. But anyway, he's stuck in there, and he's kind of trapped in the queue line, going between the queue and the station. Almost like the Kabbalah or something. And he mixes up his subjects and objects. And what that means is like anytime he sees a word, he doesn't just see the word, he sees an object as well. And he kind of gets the two confused. And there's all this like stuff with the writing that I do with that. I think it's a fun piece. And I don't mean to over intellectualize it because I do think it's a fun read. But he has all these breakdowns. It's very Philip K. Dick, right? But eventually, the area he's in does get flooded, or it could just be a dream. It's kind of, you would just have to read it. But there's definitely something going on with that. That image. I don't know what it is. I haven't figured it out yet. I don't know what it means. But to see this happen all of a sudden, it's at least a little weird. I don't know what to think of that.
So what you're saying is you wrote this hurricane into existence.
Oh, no. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. It is.
Don't try to get out of taking responsibility for this act of nature. This just seems a little too coincidental to me.
I mean, from what I understand, magic is about harnessing intention. And so if that's the case, it was the universe trying to bring me low, I suppose, right? Like eventually maybe I was, to me it wasn't ambitious. I didn't have any ambitions like that, but I wanted to write a book. I wanted to explore art, right? That's what I was interested in.
Sure.
God damn it, you found a loophole in the intentions.
I was gonna say, what if in Meme World 2024 here, when you write, like literally when you write things down into fiction, that becomes reality? Because I keep joking that fiction is becoming reality in Meme World 2024.
Well, that is something
what used to be meme is now reality. Maybe what used to be fiction is now reality. So, I'm just throwing it out there. Maybe you're some sort of wizard.
No, I mean it's something I play around with a lot, right? Like I think, and I think
very Philip K. Dick thought, right? It's a very Philip K. Dick
exactly.
type of concept.
Maybe you don't know. Maybe you don't know the difference, and that's the thing. Like I think, whether it's like us in another nation, whether it's like identity is something that's not always definitive. Like there's a line in the book I like a lot, and it's like a character. I think it's the author. I think talking to a partner or something. And they're like, I hate identity. And then they're like, oh, you do? And then they're like, yeah, at least I like to think that I do. And that's kind of how I feel about it, right? Like, even if I try not to have one in some sort of way, you can't help it. We're all going to be pieces of shit on some level, right?
Okay.
So whether I wrote this into existence or not, I feel really horrible about what's going to happen with this hurricane, and I kind of want to take whatever it is that my project and make something with it if I can.
All right.
And I do also teach economics, by the way. That's something that I'm
Oh,
teaching these days.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
So if you said you're not sure about getting your book published, if you don't get it published, what's the next step in taking
I'm kind of wanting to make it into something
a musical,
different, something that's never been made before. I've had some ambitions with it. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if this would be possible or not, right? I'm not sure. But
Right.
I always envisioned it as being kind of like an internet novel. Maybe it could be like, part social media, part marketplace, and to be a place where people can kind of come and create stuff. And basically
a gateway,
be a place
if you will.
a gateway, an entranceway, I suppose.
Entranceway.
Where, I mean, like, I guess, because even video games, right? Like, the producer and the consumer are pretty clearly delineated, right? And that's just like in reality and fiction, in certain art, the audience and the author can kind of blur a little bit. And that's kind of my favorite art a lot of the time. And so I'm really interested in what you could do with that, with something that's not just something I'm making, but that people are also collectively contributing to. And I think, that's just a project I'm interested in doing. And I wonder if it could be used because I was thinking about the story of Joseph, for example.
And
right?
the Technicolor raincoat?
Yes, the Technicolor raincoat. I love that. And I was just really identifying with the story of it recently because, I don't mean to get too personal. I don't have like the best relationship with my family. I love them to death, but, I haven't been as close to them the past couple of years. And,
Yeah.
sometimes, I feel like I'm living off in the desert out here. It's so hot all the time. And, I've just been trying to think of ways that we could create a system of some kind, even if it's just a creative work that people contribute to. We have also, the thing that's interesting about subscription services is they are a new model of economics, right? Where you're more paying for something gradually. And with AI, as well as like with certain things that have been done economically with gaming, there are ways of like, essentially, it's like I would want to make sure that this was organized correctly, so it wasn't done horribly. But there may be ways to sort of change. I guess, how do I explain this? It's kind of difficult. It's I'm hoping that there would be a way that through enough collectivity, you could gradually build what's called an index fund. And this might get a little complicated, but I'm very interested in what's called a memory palace. A memory palace.
I have no idea what that is. Please explain.
Yeah, so this idea is a memory palace. It's kind of a way to remember stuff. So for example,
like a method.
You might play an instrument, right? Or you might write, right? Like I might write a lot, right? So, in a book, you can create what's called a memory palace, where you sort of couch different memories and collect information. It's kind of the way, again, a computer works, because you file various things. And you store things in those files so that instead of having to remember things in a rote, memorized way, you can put them into different compartments and sort of assort connections between them in order to more easily access them. And I guess, so think of it this way. It's kind of like what is called a homunculus. So the concept
I'm
of
vaguely familiar.
Is you might focus a lot on, if you use your nose a lot, the nose is going to be gigantic. If you use your eyes a lot, the eyes are going to be gigantic. And this in a homunculus, and this is kind of the way that a brain works as well. The idea that our neural pathways, the more that you think about something, the more that becomes reality. The more that essentially, I remember there was this study that was done where people would practice basketball, but they would they would be blindfolded or something like that. I might not be getting it exactly right, but oh no, they would imagine playing basketball. They would imagine throwing free throw shots, I think is what it
Sure.
was. And then they'd practice it. And the people who, would imagine it actually did surprisingly well whenever they had to actually compete. I don't know if they did quite as well, but they were actually pretty close in ways that were pretty shocking. And that to me was almost some sort of like philosopher's stone or something. It's like, oh man.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It sounds like, yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like.
And all the time. And I'm not saying suffering is going to
Disney oriented too, right? Wasn't that a very big Disney aspect of early Disney?
I guess so. And I mean, I don't mind early Disney so much. Right? If you watch Snow White, that was pretty badass. I mean, imagine what that was like doing something like that for the first time. I bet he was terrified.
Sure.
But
I just think what you're describing there as a project sounds very innovative, and it sounds very much in a very Walt Disney-esque fashion too. Again, with the early aspects of what Disney was about with as far as tapping into the imagination and exploring
it is pretty
new
sweet.
ideas.
I wish I could be a part of that world.
I'm glad you mentioned Joseph there from the Bible there.
To right now because of the hurricane and everything. But what were you saying?
I'm glad you mentioned Joseph from the Bible because I want to introduce you and the folks of interwebs of where I think the origins of Mickey Mouse come from. And it is kind of biblical because I think Mickey Mouse is the representation of a demon figure. What I mean by that is, actually, let me bring this one up. Devil, Spirit Mound. So in these mounds, there was I'll just play the video instead of we can talk about it afterwards, but got a brief video of a little figurine that was uncovered out of a mound in Sweden back in 2007. And the figurine happens to look just like Mickey Mouse. In America, the mounds here in America, these mounds also contain little trinkets, little figurines and whatnot, little carved out figurines out of stone, much like this little thing that I'm on the video and this discovery of the Mickey Mouse looking demon thing. But in America, those are generally very spiritual objects. Some of them there's actually objects that look very devil-like and whatnot. I'll bring up an example of that here. But what I'm saying is that the archaeologists in this video in Sweden claim this is a depiction of a lion. In my estimations, if it's buried in a mound, it's some sort of spiritual object. And this looks more like a demon to me than anything else. And, you mentioned Disney being an occultist, being demolay, and they even inducted Mickey as a Freemason. I just think the ideas of having these concepts relative to, an occulted or spiritual nature, I think, it's very possible. That's where Mickey would have an origin story from, if created by an occultist, right? If created by a magician, right, with the wizardry of early the Mickey Mouse character as a wizard. I think a lot of that's rooted in the esoteric or occult understandings that Walt Disney had of the world, and that's all I'm saying is maybe Mickey's a demon. And got a brief video here for us.
In 2007, Swedish archaeologists made a curious discovery: a tiny bronze figure from 900 AD that looks surprisingly like Mickey Mouse. Found in the ancient settlement of OpGCD, this 2-centimeter artifact sports large round ears and a pronounced snout. Its green patina speaks to its age, yet its features remain remarkably clear. As I'm sure you've already guessed, this isn't actually Mickey Mouse. As archaeologist Jerry Rosengren explains, it's likely a lion's head, designed by someone who had never seen a lion. This figure is part of a broader Viking tradition of stylized animal designs. Clearly, these ancient artisans had a talent for creating timeless characters, though their merchandising skills left something to be desired. This find is just one of thousands of artifacts uncovered at OpGCD that are shedding light on life in the Iron Age and the Viking era.
Boy, those Vikings had some wild dildos, didn't they?
Is that what that was? It was an Iron Age butt plug.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Funny. My experience with looking at these mounds. We go ahead, Brandon. What were you saying?
Oh yeah, no, I just I don't know. I just don't know if I never really liked the whole Christian mindset of I don't know, like things. I'm not saying I don't think things can. I mean, I love Halloween, for example, right? I love getting spooked. I love going to a horror movie. I love, having experiences like that. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know. I really like to see things as complicated as maybe sometimes as complicated as I can make them, because I think that's usually how they are. And
no,
even
I
something
understand
like
what you're saying.
that.
I don't really try. I try not to view these things in like a. It's a good point you make about the trying to view them in a very Catholic, very Catholicism like
Right,
Christian
right.
belief system, but which is a good point because what I was saying with these pipes, that's exactly what happened with this pipe that was discovered here in the Americas in Oklahoma in a mound called Spiro Mound. It's called the Lucifer pipe. That's what it's referred to as. I mean, again, but that's through the same lens as like you're saying, Catholicism or Christianity. But nonetheless, I do think that that thing found in the mound in Sweden was not a lion, and there's some sort of spiritual aspect to whatever that is. And I would argue that it's
Well,
some
I
sort of
definitely agree.
demon in
I
their
just,
little
why
in
can't
their
it
in
be
their
something that,
right.
I don't know. I just feel like it's just odd to me. Like, I think, like our iconography is just as odd, I guess. Which is what I think is funny about it, right? Like, I think, I like to be able to, like, anyone who can't laugh at themselves, right, probably needs to, like, have an inner look. That's what I like about all this shit. Because I love to make fun of Disney, but I also love to I also like to enjoy it. And I also am Disney. I'm an American. We're all like Disneyfied to shit. We can't
Hey, speak for
escape.
yourself,
It's
buddy. Speak for
invaded
yourself.
it's invaded the culture. So it's more about being able to confront yourself, I guess. And I'm not saying y'all are being condemning or anything like that. I don't mean it like that. It's more of just I like that kind of stuff. I like any kind of iconography from any culture that has like a surrealistic quality or a strange quality to it, or an odd, esoteric, dark, or
Yep.
even positive one. I don't know. I like it all. So
No, you had it right the first time. Odd, esoteric, and dark. This demon that's known as Mickey Mouse. I mean, what I understand what you're saying as far as it's as American as apple pie. That's often the same reference I make about Charles Manson. Charles Manson is as American as apple pie, and which actually ties into the story here tonight with Walt Disney. I don't know if you're familiar with this narrative, Brandon, but did you know that the Manson one of the murders attributed to the Manson family occurred at a home formerly owned by Walt Disney?
That's odd.
It was the La Biancas. Dan, have you heard this tale before?
No, but I am not surprised that you have this knowledge. You're always bringing it right back around. It's a circle of life.
It is indeed, or death in this regard, because the La Biancas were murdered back in August 10th the night of August 10th, early morning hours of August 11th, 1969, in a home in Los Angeles known as 3301 Waverly Drive, and then that was 1969, right? However, in I believe it was 1959, maybe 10 years prior, maybe 8 years prior, something like that. The Walt Disney lived in that. He owned and lived in that very same home, where the La Bianca right here, 3301 Waverly Drive, August 10th, 1969. I think that's an important date here, because here we go on August 12th, 1969. The Haunted Mansion at Disneyland in New Orleans Square, there in Southern California, in Los Angeles, there. The Haunted Mansion at Disneyland in New Orleans Square opened to the public on August 12th, 1969. So within 24 hours of folks getting murdered at Walt Disney's old home, a mansion, if you will, they opened up the Haunted Mansion there in, was that Anaheim, I guess, there in Los Angeles? The home of Disneyland. What's funny is even going on like Disney message boards, folks are trying to or Snopes for that matter, folks are trying to dispel the rumor that the Haunted Mansion opened at the same time as the Manson murders. Right here, it says this is just one example. This is on Snopes and the message boards. Without even checking Snopes, the haunted mansion did not open the same weekend as the murders. Maybe close though. That's what they're saying. It's literally within 24 hours of. I'm sure they said open to the public, so I'm sure the haunted mansion was already operating. At the very same time the La Biancas are getting murdered in Walt Disney's old mansion. I'm just saying that's some creepy demonic activity, if you ask me. Capable of a corporation that's focused on, the worship of some sort of demonic mouse. And because I look at Disney as like a government, right? Like they're their own entity, right? They're in so many other nations, right? They have just as much, like, I view the European Disney as like an embassy, right? Like that's the embassy for Disney to Europe. Disneyland Japan. Like Disneyland Japan being like the Disney embassy to the Asian lands, that kind of thing. Because I mean, they wield a level of power, in my opinion, that's on par with a government. Especially with the money they have.
This seems like a stretch.
See, I seem to have scared Brennan off.
Yeah, I didn't hear what he said when he.
I didn't need it. I'll bring him back on when he's back. Oh, he's back.
Yeah, I'm sure.
He's back already.
My bad. Sorry, my dog was barking, so I wanted to put him in the other room. Sorry.
I thought Disney was at your
what
front
were we
door
talking
knocking.
about?
What kind of dog you got there?
I got a Schnauzer dog.
Oh man, I got a good barbecue recipe for Schnauzer.
Yeah, she's sweet. But anyway,
I was just saying,
remind me what we were talking about.
Yeah, given my opinion of the corporation of Disney and their activities, like again, that's what I was asking before. Like, was Walt Disney an evil guy? Because it seems to me that, in my opinion, Disney is a pretty demonic corporation. I mean, they've inserted sexual suggestive cartoons in their children's cartoons.
Those are fantastic. You don't have those queued up, do you?
I don't.
Like when that preacher gets a boner in The Little Mermaid. And then the word sex shows up in The Lion King when he lays down. That goddamn.
Yeah, in the clouds. Yeah, and then they got like the idea of Pinocchio and the Little Children Island. Kind of has some reminiscence of like an Epstein situation, an Epstein Island type situation.
Well, I mean, the only thing I will say about that, I mean, I still kind of feel I am obviously totally fine with shitting on Disney and any of this stuff. I don't know. It's like I always like to take an inner turn, maybe more than an external one. I guess everything is outside. That's the way that I like to look at it. And that's why I like fucking with shit like that, making fun of it or whatever, because, it's not like we aren't like corrupt in some sort of way, even if it's just like us being like an asshole to someone or us being selfish or whatever. I don't know. I guess this is kind of cheesy, but I don't know. I think it's demonic the way that we do almost everything.
So
I guess
how do you
in society, but
how do you feel about Disney cruises being sent as an adventure from a Disney cruise, like a side adventure? From when you go to the Disney private island, they offer.
Yeah, I'm assuming those have to be having like a devastating environmental effect, from what I understand.
Well, no. I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. How do you feel about those snorkeling adventures going to Epstein's private island, despite Snopes saying, "Do Disney cruises send kids to Epstein's private island?" Of course.
Well, and this is kind of the thing that I'm trying to talk about here, I guess, is that I think that.
This is true, by the way.
About Disney is much more of maybe like the environmental impact that they're having, and less so maybe like some of this other stuff, right? Like, if I feel like Disney is getting judged by nature, it would probably
seem pretty embedded into the corporate culture of this type of situation. If they're approving something like this, and this is after Epstein's already convicted. This stuff's still going on.
Oh yeah, I mean, like it's more of like that's the effect that but I'm talking about the hurricane stuff, right? Like,
well, that's what I'm saying. God hates them because of some stuff. You know what I mean? They're up to no good. God even hates Disney. That's what I'm getting at. So, like,
if it's something like that,
for example, the chairman of the board of Disney. What's that?
Nature is going to fight back, right? It's usually like the natural world, and I think I'll put it to you this way: I kind of like to play music as well. And it's like, when you're a musician, you just gotta hum the notes and try not to mess it up. And what I mean by that is, it's like if you go too high, your voice is gonna crack. You go too low, your voice is gonna crack. So it's all about kind of trying to stay in that middle general, more resonant frequency, I
Talking some
guess.
yin and yang type
And
business then.
clearly, the way that we're organizing things in society, and I mean, I guess, like, I don't mean to sound like nihilistic when I say earlier that, like, everything we do is demonic, but that's kind of what I mean by it. Is it's like
I think
we're either
everything
going
Disney
to
does is
extreme
demonic.
highs or extreme lows, and I think nature is kind of having to sort of balance things out, and that's why I feel so passionate about creating my project, I suppose. Is
Right.
I want to create something that resonates with people. In the way
So
that maybe Disney did before everything went to shit. And I'm sure mine stuff will go to shit too, but maybe at
yeah,
least
well,
while I'm alive, I can make it as good as I can. And that's kind of what I think.
Listen, you've got my support. You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend
Well, I
in
appreciate
me.
that, man.
I think that might be
I know it's
Pixar, Nate.
cheesy, but
Yeah, Disney Pixar.
they're the same thing. Yeah.
See,
They bought them
taken-
because
they've literally taken over everything. That's kind of my point of being demonic. Like they know no
It's
ends.
true.
They buy out all these different platforms and then they run them into shit. You know what I mean?
That is
Like
true.
I mean, the Star Wars. I used to be a big Star Wars fan. I can't even stomach anything Star Wars in years, courtesy of Disney.
some
And
of
their
the stuff they've done. I like some of their stuff. That Ahsoka, that's a pretty good series.
I mean, I didn't hate the movies, but like I tried to watch that Mandalorian and I was like, no, this is not.
Oh, I love Mandalorian. I think the series they're doing on some of those minor characters are fantastic.
I thought it was. I mean, if they're gonna, in my opinion, if they're gonna capitalize on the product, they need to focus on what made it successful in the first place. And they've gone like, oh, well, let's get demonic with it. And again, I think it's just a culture that has permeated through Walt Disney Corporation for a long time. Again, back to the Epstein thing, the guy that would have approved Disney Corporation sending contracting out snorkeling adventures to go around the waters of Epstein Island was literally a client of Epstein, like a ex-U.S. senator from the state of Maine, George Mitchell. And he's involved in all sorts of other stuff with speaking of the Catholic Church, he covered up all the Philly Archdiocese sex scandals for the Catholics. So, I think a lot of what we've been talking about here so far, Brendan, is pretty relative to Disney. What I assert is their demonic nature. And again, I don't wish any kind of destruction on any sort of innocent parties relative to that hurricane and whatnot, of any kind. But part of me is excited to see whatever destruction possible to some place like Disney.
I'm definitely not excited, but what I will say is it's like, I
Real.
think it's easy to get lost in the specific details of what would be, because I'm not trying to argue against any of those at all. I just think,
I didn't think you were. Yeah.
what are the ones that we're contributing to collectively that we could adjust? That's what I like to think about.
Oh, well, that's a good way to put it, because Disney World in Florida is essentially international waters, or it was until very recently. I don't know if you all recall, everyone was up in arms with Governor of Florida DeSantis' decisions to revoke some laws surrounding Disney's property rights. That's because back in the late 60s, right after Walt died, I believe it was Roy Disney's last act of demonic activities, was to create this international water zone basically going on down there in Disney World. So what I'm saying is they basically got legislation passed, which DeSantis recently revoked, that made Disney World its own county, right? So while, commensurate with any other county, they have their own court, judicial, firefighting kind of systems. Essentially, they don't really have an official judicial system, but they do have like a mayor and a form of government, right? Like that sort of kind of municipal judicial system, right? But what I think the product of what occurred there by doing that is Disney could do whatever they want to in that area, because you have to be an employee of Disney to live on Disney World, and there are 2 cities they made, and only the people who live in those cities can run the government there of Buena Vista, Florida. I forget the name of the other one, but point being is they basically run their own internet, their own nation inside a nation of America. So I think a lot of folks probably fell victim to some nefarious shit there over the years. And it was 2016 where that young boy got eaten by an alligator. I just think that wasn't the first person on paper. That's the first person that died there, right? But they'd already been operating for 40 some years by that point. So what I'm saying is they've been paying off a lot of folks from some, to cover up nefarious shit over the years. And that kid that got eaten by the alligator, I think that was the first family that was like, we're not going to take your money. And that's the reason why something like that became public, because let's say a kid goes missing on Disney World. I don't know that they, previous to that law getting revoked, talking about what we can do about Disney's demonic activity. I think some of that's already probably gone on through the people of Florida and revocation of that law. But yeah, in my opinion, a kid could go missing there beforehand. No one would know. Disney would just cover it up. Who do they report to? They're not going to report to the governor. They're reporting to the CEO and the chairman of Disney. This creepy fella, George Mitchell, covering up sex abuse crimes for the Philly Archdiocese in the Epstein book, right? Just saying, it's
there's tons of stuff. Like I remember, 33 is a Masonic number, right? I think California is voting on something regarding that right now, right? Like Prop 33 or something like that about rent controls. From what I understand. And so there's also, there's tons of stuff like that. Like the idea of how laws can be used within the hands of people who are powerful people, to basically just protect their own interests rather than, for the general collective good. And, that doesn't usually, people who talk about that kind of stuff don't last very long, as they say.
It seems like somehow Disney,
unfortunate souls.
But I honestly think we're kind of in a place with history where I feel like some compromises could be made, if that makes sense, especially with an event like this happening. I'm optimistic, despite, how terrible things have been in the past.
You're optimistic that Disney turns over a new leaf?
Isn't that how nature works? Right? Like, isn't that why these kind of cycles occur? Don't we eventually reach a limit? I think it's like
I suppose.
It's reaching rock bottom or something. Like maybe we are as a society right now. I don't know. I like to think of it that way, at least.
Yeah, but like if Disney was a person, like no one, I don't know. I can honestly say I'm not sure anyone would like objectively want to be friends with Disney. You know what I mean? Like, if Disney was a person, right? Like, not saying Walt Disney the person. I'm saying if Disney Corporation was a person. And I'm saying this before like all of the revelations I think that are going to come out from all these Hollywood scandals that are going to unfold. I don't know. I'm not saying P. Diddy necessarily has a direct connection to Disney or anything else like that. But for example, he's got direct connections to the Nickelodeon child talent. And if you want to compare like the Britney, like look at Britney Spears, right? She's one of the Disney children talents. She's done lost her mind. They did that girl. I don't know. Who knows? Lord knows what they've done to that woman. But on the flip side of that, with Nickelodeon and folks connected, to like the P. Diddy situation, you have like Amanda Bynes. She'd be like a very similar party to what Disney did to Britney as Nickelodeon did to Amanda Bynes.
Well, I think if anybody was messing around with that kind of stuff, I think I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I like to believe in some level of karma. And in a way,
I hope so. I think I think that's what Hurricane Milton might be,
Yeah,
karma.
Maybe. But I think it's all of our karma to a certain extent. That's why I feel like a certain obligation. Like I would love to have part of my project have some sort of connection to animal conservation. It's the entranceway at the end of the day, right? And if that's that synchronicity, I kind of feel like it's the universe pointing me in the direction of like, oh man, like we've kind of messed something up somewhere in, the universe where something like this is happening. And maybe it's just what has always been naturally happening. I don't know. But
it just seems like with Disney, like it's such a ridiculous nature. Like for example, like we were mentioning before with the copyright stuff, right? Like, so that Snopes says that never happened. There was no Disney approved cruise, snorkeling adventures to Epstein Island. But like, this is literally like a Disney contracted website about their excursions that you can do that they contract from their own private island. It's right there. Little St. James Island. Afterwards, you make your way to your second snorkel stop. So, that's what I'm saying. Like, the level of propaganda even surrounding stuff, it's so obvious, you know what I mean, relative to Disney is, to me, like, again, I view Disney in like, I think a lot of folks view it as like the magical kingdom, right? Like where there's all these fun, there's this whole like thing of like Generation X and I think beyond, like the folks that grew up as children at Disney. There's like a whole contention of those kind of people that never grow out of that. I think that's the magic of Disney. It's some sort of like brainwashing situation because, you know, for example, when they built Epcot Center and many of their other establishments there at Disney World in Florida, the Sunshine State of Florida there, everything's sponsored by the military industrial complex. So like, I don't view Disney in any different regard than I do Northrop Grumman or Boeing.
Well,
right?
I don't know. The only thing I will say about that is I don't necessarily think that even corrupts even that entirely, I guess. That's why I just don't like the moral black and white, you know, dualistic.
Fair enough.
It's either evil or good. I think I don't know. I just don't like to be reductive in that way because I think it takes away the complexity of stuff. And I mean, that being said,
it's fair enough. I got no problem with that. I just, like I said, I tend to view Disney in a purely dark capacity. Like anything they do, I'm just like, why are they doing that? Like, what's their end game here, right?
Guys, I hate to interrupt here, but I gotta roll out. So you all enjoy the rest of this conversation. I'll check it out.
You to leave?
Well, Dan, it was nice meeting you, buddy.
Yeah, you too, man. And guys,
thanks,
yeah, follow me on YouTube. I wish I was laughing, and I'll catch you guys next time. And remember, Hakuna Matata. It means no worries for the rest of your days. It's our problem.
I bet you didn't expect to have a Disney soundtrack live performance here tonight, did you, Brent?
I enjoyed that. That was fun.
Nice. Yeah, Dan's a character.
So what I'm gonna do.
I get what you're saying as far as the duality nature of it, but again, like that's why I'm trying to share my perspective of. I view Mickey Mouse as a demonic creature that's some sort of like worshipped in an occult fashion by the group that started the Disney Corporation, and they've been engaged in Nazi activity, kid diddling stuff, sexualizing cartoons. You know what I mean? Again, I have a laundry list of complaints with the organization. I don't view them in any different capacity. Like take out the word Disney and replace it with something like Scientology, right? Like, how is it any better, right? It's not that different to me, in my opinion. Like, with the way I view the two is not that.
The only thing I will say about that, I mean, everything is a little bit of a what is it, like a multi-marketing scheme,
multi-marketing scheme, like a pyramid
scheme in that way, right? Like I heard something today that I thought was interesting. It's like, the pyramid wasn't built in a day. And it wasn't built from the top down. It was built from the bottom up, brick by brick. You know what I mean? So that's I think we got to remember that sometimes. I think, it's really easy to Disney as a corporation. And I don't like corporations. I'm not like necessarily pro corporation in a lot of ways. But, I just try to like remember that. I mean, I can condemn something without having to condemn the people, I guess, right? Like that's how it is with nation.
I'm not necessarily taking a beef with Disney employees. Maybe the Disney employees that routinely get rounded up in sexual kid diddling operations down there in Florida, routinely by the sheriff's department. That's a very frequent occurrence. I don't think a month goes by or a news release goes by where folks like that Sheriff Grady Judd, or what I think is his name, he's always in the Polk County there near Orlando. He's always rounding up Disney employees in his child diddling sex stings. So,
yeah, I don't know, all these things. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not into that kind of stuff, but a lot of that kind of stuff I feel like is less structural in a way that, like, that's like criminal stuff that I wish that like the law would intervene in more. But I'm not like, I'm not involved in anything like that. We're not involved with anything like that. So I think that's
what you're saying is the Gibney Corporation would not approve of these activities.
Absolutely not. And that's why I think I'm passionate about creating it, is like, one, to make something that I don't know, that's, I mean, I'm not saying like, I'm saying that I wish we could just focus on the art more. That's the thing because when I see that Beverly Hills like thing, oh my God, that got me so excited. Like,
No, I totally
I
agree with you
feel
because I
there's not enough
obviously
parody. There's not enough like comedy anymore.
no for
We
sure.
get
Yeah, no, I
lost in the
totally agree with you.
detail. But anyway,
Well, I agree with you as far as the production of like the motivating folks to use their imagination, right, to create their own their own form of art.
But
Because then
that's
again, I
where it
think
got corrupted. At some point, it took over and it monopolized so heavily on whatever that idea was. And in that way, I feel like it's kind of a symbol for American culture, right? Like we've gotten way too far. We're not resonant with the
that's actually
frequency anymore,
that's a fair point.
So
So what
things are out of
is
sync.
speaking?
And I'm not saying it's necessarily my job. I'm a fucking moron. I mean, that's kind
No,
of why I wanted to come
I don't
here
know
and
about
talk
that.
to you.
I don't know about that. But speaking of that point right there, Brent. Well, how do you feel about the fact you mentioned earlier you're teaching economics these days? How do you feel about the economics of Disney? They never want to close, right? Like they historically have stayed open during hurricanes. I've found varying reports of how many times they have closed. They're not, as a private corporation, they can make up whatever storyline they want to. As I stated before, kids could go. In my opinion, kids have gone missing on Disney World, and families been paid off. Again, that's purely speculation on my part. I'm just saying
Well, the thing that
the
always
governmental
pisses me
structure environment existed for that to have occurred and no one to have known about. I'm just saying it could have happened. And in that same regard, like they don't ever seem to want to close. Like they have varying reports between like they've closed 8 different times to 12 different times for hurricanes, but it seems like that the mighty dollar is in a very extreme capitalistic fashion is really the
I do agree. I mean,
soldiers of the mouse.
yeah, but I'm sure there's also plenty of government involvement too. I mean, I think that's the thing that the more and more that I learn about economics, the more and more that I realize how much everything is a mixed economy.
They own the
In ways
government.
I didn't expect.
They owned the
So,
government there. That was
yeah.
like basically their own nation. It was Disney Nation.
Yeah, it is strange. It is strange. I mean, the thing that bothers me about it is how much they dominate the market rather than and in a way, like I think, whether you call it a business or whether you call it a government,
Well,
it's the same
no, it is. I mean,
thing.
they have dominated the
Main
market. Yeah, I mean, you're right. They have. I mean, that's what we were getting at before. I was saying was when I was making the point about Pixar, like Pixar, Star Wars, Marvel. I mean, Fox. They've dominated the market. They bought
Exactly.
out
And that's like
all these
it's
brands.
everything is in balance. Like whether it's, a government, whether it's a business, neither of them to me, it doesn't really matter. It's just the same way of organizing something. It's just whether or not it's singing too high or singing too low. Because someone sings too high, they sing too low, the voice sounds like shit. You don't want to listen to the song. Everything goes to shit. A hurricane starts coming. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that again, anyone is to blame for this. More of just like the fact that, the way that our systems function are out of whack and causing environmental problems, very likely.
Disney's
Uh,
causing their own economical problems, in my opinion. The
that's
garbage
true.
that they've
That
been
is true. I
producing.
completely agree with that too.
I mean,
It's like
it's reflective in their bottom line, right? I mean, the money they've lost is fairly astronomical as far as the corporation goes. If they weren't so divested with so many brands, they probably would have been more affected by it. But
well, and I think this is the thing. It's like maybe this is why I'm optimistic. It's not just cheese. It's not just bullshit. Part of it is
well, I mean, it
also
is for the mouse. It is just cheese and bullshit.
no, I agree. I agree. But I'm just a person, right? I can tell you why. I can tell you my intentions.
Oh,
Um,
please
uh,
do.
and I think, you know, sometimes whether it's a country, whether it's a person, whether it's I don't know, whether it's a
An
corporation, whatever
independent private
it is,
corporation that worships a demonic mouse. Just throwing it out
whatever
there.
it is.
Just an example.
I do know that like native peoples and lots of ancient traditions, shamans would take on the diseases of their culture as
Sure.
a healing process, right? And this is why I think it's much more interesting to kind of view yourself as outside or whatever. It's like it's very easy to kind of heal if you recognize that there's a problem, right? So that's why I mean,
Mhm.
whatever bullshit we want to criticize with Disney, like, hey, I'm okay with it, as long as it's reasonable. And because we're all contributing to it, it's like some sort of virus that does need to be healed. And I'm just over in the corner, like building my little, my stories or whatever that I want people to read, kind of to try to maybe, just try to heal some of the bullshit we're all dealing with regarding these things that have just gotten thoroughly out of control. I think it's rather simple intention, honestly. But yeah, anyway.
So what do you? So then, in that regard, as far as I'm not saying everything that Disney's ever produced has been with malintent or evil focus or anything else like that. But like, I look at statements like, speaking of the Nazi stuff, look at statements from like Joseph Goebbels. Apparently, he used to attribute his understanding of propaganda to Walt Disney. You know what I mean? Like he's learning from Disney on how to propagandize a population. And then I look at things such as like the princess mentality that Disney's created, or these adults, again, like the Gen X and later that have grown up as children in the Disney environment who are now Disney adults. And they're fucking disturbing people in society. And if you ask me, this idea of this never leaving childhood, or this idea that of this, whatever kind of, magical mindset that Disney's wanted to instill on folks in folks' brain holes.
Childhood is going to end for all of us. I can tell you that much. We all
don't tell that to some of these Disney adults, buddy. I mean, I don't think they'd take it. I don't think they'd take it very kindly.
You might be right. What I will say though is, it makes me think of that. I guess that Indiana Jones section at the end of the Last Crusade, where he's having a walk.
I love Indiana Jones, so.
The invisible walkway.
Okay, so we're talking about Indiana Jones and the search for the Holy, or the Last Crusade, right? Yeah, Last Crusade.
Yeah,
right?
So it's like, I think, and it's funny. I guess the irony is, like, I bet that's owned by Disney at this point, right?
Yeah.
So
it
I don't know.
Is.
This is such
it
a
absolutely is, because they bought out Lucasfilms too, didn't they, with the whole Star Wars purchase?
That's right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm totally fine. I'm totally fine with my childhood ending about this kind of shit. I want to hold on to some level of optimism, I suppose.
No, I think having a childlike imagination, as far as, especially as a writer or an artist of any kind, right, is a productive, mindset, right? Like I'm not diminishing. Like I think the reason why so many people are like fooled by the magic of Disney is because it makes sense. I mean, there is a certain element to it that makes sense. It seems like a good thing.
It's
right?
a much smaller version than ever. It's like now it's like 10% versus 90%. Whereas like, when Snow White came out, it was like, at least 70% true entertainment that was actually interesting.
Sure.
So it's just gotten corrupted. It's like I was talking about brain pathways earlier. It's like, we need to think.
These folks don't have any brain pathways.
The globe is a brain, our world is a brain. It's, that sort of philosopher's stone where you can kind of rethink of things in a different way and heal things, right? Like, I'm not saying you can heal like a terrible disease, but I'm saying like, if there's something that you've struggled with as a person, or you have like a habit in some way, like the brain is plastic where you can sort of think of things in a different way and carve new pathways. So that's why I'm optimistic about, like, if Disney is getting fucked over, I would love to do something with the preservation effort or something that we could do. Because Disney's going to rebuild itself, right? And it's just going to keep building on top of itself. It's just going to be the same problems over and over and over again. I think that's why I'm kind of passionate about this. It's like I want to find some way to, I don't know, build something, whatever it is, even if it's just something digital, something that doesn't have as much of a footprint that, I don't know, could lead to positive change in our society or whatever, however cheesy that fucking is. And I'm an idiot. So I guess that's why I'm wanting to come on a show like this, because I got, all I can do is write. You know what I'm saying? I can come up with creative ideas. I have some economic understanding, but I'm a little bit of an idiot. But I think coming from a place of humility with this kind of stuff and just talking about, what your intention is and to be passionate about it, even if it is a pipe dream, right? Because I'd rather fail at a pipe dream that I have than then totally kill that within myself. Sorry, I also have a cat too, so.
No worries, man. I like your ideas of the new your format of trying to introduce your Gibney story to the folks as far as producing
And I've
motivating their
really
own
enjoyed the
folks to
AI
contribute their
artwork
own
stuff
stuff,
with
right?
it too. It's been interesting. Sorry,
No,
the
I think
cat's so annoying. I think we gotta go soon, but anyway.
no worries. Yeah, we can get wrapped up here in a few minutes here. I appreciate you joining me here, Brandon. That's it's again. I think you got some interesting ideas and concepts there for sure. I think I probably would enjoy the Gibney Corporation far more than I would the Disney Corporation, but that's just me. I have a
Absolutely,
very
that's the goal.
very
That's the goal.
a very cynical
It's
approach, cynical view of what Disney's about. Again, I attribute it all to some sort of demon. So I mean, I honestly, like, as much as I like to share my ideas, it's refreshing that people don't have like that don't view Disney as a demonic force as much as I do, because I would hate to live in a world where everyone shares the same cynical views that I have. But yeah, Disney.
Well, I would
like,
also hate to live in a world where everybody is as cheesy as I am. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
No, I'm just,
whether you're cursed with innocence or whether you're cursed with demonic forces, it's not, neither of them are all that fun. You know what I mean?
right.
It can be, and it's just about laughing about it and farting, and we're all pieces of shit anyway.
Oh,
So
for sure.
that's
But I
the
mean,
real message, I suppose.
I wouldn't mind if Disney started producing no, I appreciate it. That's a good message. I do agree with you there too. I just and I agree with you also. I wouldn't mind if Disney started producing like good content again. You know what I mean? Like actual again, like not like repetitive same nonsense. Again, Disney's made a lot of very innovative, very imaginative things that they didn't have to go purchase from somebody else or anything else like that. I think at one point in time they had a culture that maybe was more creative and less, possibly less demonic. I don't know. Maybe the demons are the ones giving them the
I guess that's
creativity.
why I wanted to come on here in some sort of. I mean, I'm just going to start, I guess, making appearances. I've got, I might be making a podcast related to this. I'm not exactly sure, but I think that's why. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what I even want the project to be. I don't want to be the only person working on it. You know what I
That's what I'm
mean?
saying.
Like,
That idea that you had of introducing a new kind of format as far as like almost like crowdsourcing some imaginative creative projects, I think that's a really fascinating concept.
and one other aspect of it I wanted
relative to our times.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
no, go ahead.
One other thing I want to mention is kind of this idea of like, so in the narrative of the story, which can sometimes mix autobiography and the story itself, right? Something that I'm always having to debate is it's like, is Disney completely dead, right? And I think that's the thing that's sort of terrifying or hilarious, I guess, about any situation any of us would involve ourselves in pretty much once corporations become a thing, right? It's like they're not going to die. They're not going away. Even if the hurricane hits, like, what can I do to try to still have some semblance of not bullshittery, despite the fact that for all I know, Disney is like setting me up. You know what I mean?
Right.
Who knows?
It's like you're a secret. You're a secret unwilling agent.
His place, he would check off all those things, and it was like, is he the one who bombed his own house? You know what I mean? Who knows? Right? Like, I don't know. All I know is I can't believe half the shit I'm seeing that's happening in the world half the time. It's very surreal these days.
Yeah, I mean, shit's definitely speeding up. And speaking of speeding up, that hurricane was speeding up for Disney World. So it sounds like you would like to see Disney survive such a disaster, which I'm okay with.
I just want people to survive. I want the animals to survive. The entranceway, no. So yeah, that's where I'm.
Again, I just look at it like at least I have a hope that God hates the demon Mickey Mouse as much as I do, and seeks its destruction through, such things as a natural disaster.
Yeah, I feel you on that. What do you think of the whole Mormon connections to all this? That's kind of a funny way to interpret this stuff. I wasn't raised Mormon. I'm not Mormon myself or anything, but
well, I was raised Mormon.
So what can you tell me about that? I was curious.
I was indoctrinated through their various couple different priesthoods.
Well, tell me about that. It's interesting because doesn't that have like a quality to all this? I feel like, right? Like boats
Disney?
coming to America and everything.
Oh, to the floods?
Yeah, or something like that.
It certainly it's certainly relative to the mounds. I mean, Mormonism is based on mounds. I mean, the Book of Mormon was found in a mound, according to Joseph Smith.
That's right.
Yeah, the quote unquote golden plates were discovered in the Hill Cumorah in the town of Batavia, New York. And I can already tell you right now, that timeline is bunk. I found I won't go into the full details, but I'm just saying, like, the whole Mormon tale of, I'm not saying the tale of the golden plates and all that. So I'm saying their timeline of events that they officially sell as the origin story of their religion is bunk. You know, I found folks' last will and testaments in the state of Vermont where Mormonism originated from, before the families. Joseph Smith was born there, Brigham Young. The folks who started Mormonism all came from Vermont. The Taft family, you know. There's last wills and testaments in Vermont that say, like, don't let the Mormons baptize before the dead, because they're real big into that, right? Well, these last wills and testaments are prior to the date in which Joseph Smith's having these discoveries and digging up gold plates out of mounds. But, you know, I think there's a lot of things in our world that are focused around these mounds, not just Joseph Smith, the golden plates, not just Disney and their possible demonic origins of Mickey Mouse and the god that they worship within their corporation, as I assert. You know, the whole America's pastime, baseball, that's built around a mound. The entire game is focused on the pitcher's mound. It was created by a man who was part of a secret society that had a deep affinity for the mounds. Abner Doubleday is at least attributed by, you know, most modern historians as inventing baseball. He was a member of the Society of Cincinnati. He was also the second president of the American Theosophical Society after Madame Blavatsky. So the guy was an occultist. So there is a connection between occultism and these mounds at every angle, in my opinion. And again,
I went by something recently. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, you froze up.
I was weirded out by something recently. I've been doing. Okay, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. I've been looking into what Gibbsby could mean, because I've been learning a little bit more about Hebrew, trying to like learn it a little bit more.
Sure.
And it's, I don't know, it's been pretty life-changing in a lot of ways. And I've looked it up, and Gibbsby actually means a hill smaller than a mountain. At least like, you know, with those kind of things, it means, and I had just come up with that out of the blue, right? And that's the thing that is like.
Or did you? Maybe the Disney Corporation used mind controlling devices to beam that thought into your head. I'm just saying that's probably possible.
I think that's what's good about an idea like that, is that make yourself the parody.
There you go.
That way, no matter what, you're having a good time. You know what I mean?
I like that idea. We don't have kind of the concept. Kind of the concept here I have at Operation GCD with the parody of the old Sesame Street Oscar the Grouch right there in the logo. So that's definitely a good thought there, Brennan.
I know that I'm still getting used to doing early appearances and everything, but I appreciate you having me on, buddy.
No, that was a great way to leave the show here. I appreciate you joining me here to get a little GCD. I'm sure Dan wish he could have joined us longer. I think he had a stand-up comedy that he was going to do tonight. He is a fairly actively working stand-up comedy or stand-up comedian in the southern Ohio regions, Columbus and Dayton and Cincinnati and whatnot. But yeah, dude, welcome back anytime, Brandon. I definitely enjoyed the conversation. We can always talk about the possible destruction of Disney at some point. I think it's inevitable, whether or not it's this hurricane or not. But I mean, that's just my opinion, or at least my hope. Right?
That's probably going to have an effect on our economics. You know what I mean? Like that's probably not going to have a net good. You know?
No, it's not. It's definitely not going to have a net good. It's definitely not going to have a net good. I look at it like the Bill Cosby show. Once Bill Cosby got outed as being this, gross offender of all sorts of nefarious shit, some of the cast of his show had to go back and find like day jobs. One of the actors on the show was suddenly working at the Whole Foods because all those royalty checks dried up. He was no longer getting all those. Cosby show may be popular in America, but it plays 24/7 in foreign countries. You know what I mean? There's always foreign countries that eat up these American shows. So those royalty checks dried up as soon as Bill Cosby became a full-blown creepster to the public. I think something like that's going to happen to Disney. I think you're right. It could have devastating economic effects for sure. But yeah, so possibly future conversation once that occurs. I never dislike talking about the destruction of Disney, especially relative to the economy. And again, something to rebuild in its place. Maybe the Gibney Corporation. You never know.
Well, I'm not going to be
in the aftermath of the destruction of the Disney Corporation. Something's got to exist.
Something's got to exist, man. And I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say with it is if it's going to be some sort of collective thing, I'm just ready to almost just give it away to somebody. This has been exhausting. I'm a teacher, you know what I mean? Like I barely get any sleep. I need some help, you know what I'm saying? So, hey, anybody you want to be involved, you just hit me up.
Do you have any social media or to connect with you?
Sure. I mean, I've got a Twitter at Brendan Utley or whatever. If you want to hit me up there, I mean, I'll put a
link in the notes for folks so they need to connect to you there.
For sure. I mean, I'm pretty unknown, but that's what I like to do for now. I'm not necessarily wanting to pop off. I'm wanting to build slowly. That's how these things work. If that makes sense.
You may have some more folks that are interested in your novel and project there. So by all means, I'll put it in the show notes here. Your Twixter. But yeah, Brennan, any closing words here before we sign off?
Just sending good vibes to the people in Florida. I'll put it that way.
All right. Yeah. Well, fair enough.
I hope everything's all right. Anyways, we'll talk later, buddy. See you later.
That's a good one.
Well, that's it. That's the show here, folks. So the next time you're out on the town, visiting your local watering holes, or perhaps just meandering around, and you hear the unmistakable sounds of metal clanking, and you spot signs of a disturbance, but check your six. Look in that garbage can, 'cause you never can tell. The GCDs may be loose in your town.